Hello, my beautiful doves. Welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about Miss Lana Del Rey, and I'm assuming if you clicked on this video, you know who she is, but if you don't, she is a singer who rose to fame in 2012, and she specializes in singing these very melancholic ballads about love and hopelessness.
'Cause hope is a dangerous thing for a woman like me to have.
And Lana Del Rey is actually her stage name. Her real name is Lizzie Grant, and I will be kind of saying that a couple times in this video, so I just need to say that so you all know who I'm talking about. I would be absolutely lying if I didn't say I was a huge fan of Lana back in 2012. And like many other kids on Tumblr of that era, I was extremely captivated by her aesthetic and her stage persona. I do want to just say before I get into this, I am a huge fan of Lana's music still. I still love to listen to her, and I'm not coming for her in this video. I've just kind of been thinking a lot lately. I mean, this video has been on the back burner for a long time, but I've been thinking about how she rose to fame and kind of the criticisms that have come out lately, and I just wanted to share my theory with you all about all this. First, I just want to take a bit to establish what her aesthetic is and what her music is all about, because I feel like Lana has achieved a pretty good consistency between those two things. So, Miss Lana cultivated a very nostalgic Americana look for herself when she debuted in 2012, but I wouldn't necessarily call it glamorous or luxurious. I know, controversial, but I'll try to tell you what I mean by that. Another star who I think really took hold of the retro post-war aesthetic was Dita Von Teese, but her style is very glamorous, and she clearly takes a lot of influence from old Hollywood movie stars. She's really dedicated to her 1940s glam waves. She's got the Monroe-esque beauty mark tattooed on her face, and she always looks really put together. Lana, on the other hand, was like girl next door retro. She wasn't quite Marilyn Monroe, she was more Norma Jean. Aside from her little Jackie Kennedy cosplay with A$AP Rocky, iconic music video by the way, her aesthetic mostly geared towards romanticized working and middle class visions of white America. For instance, cherry pie, Pepsi Cola, the American flag, racing cars, beaches, deserts, trailer parks, cocaine, blue jeans, and older men. She references a lot of 20th century American culture references. For example, one of the lyrics to her song Off to the Races on the Born to Die album is "Light of my life, fire of my loins," which is the opening quote of Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita. Her song Ultraviolence has the line, which is the name of a popular 60s song from the girl group The Crystals. Lana has dipped her toe in some culturally appropriative motifs as well, like wearing a Native American headdress in her Ride music video and appropriating Latino American culture in her Tropico film, things that were, of course, inexcusable at the time but have aged even worse since. Her fashion style is a little interesting just because it ranges quite a bit. If I could summarize, I would say it mostly consists of Daisy Dukes, t-shirts, 1960s baby doll mini dresses, biker and racing jackets, skinny jeans, floral prints, and flats. On the red carpet and in her videos, it's more obvious that she takes style inspirations from mid-century fashion trends and pop icons. But on stage and on the daily, her style fluctuates quite a lot. Sometimes she'll do up her hair in her signature beehive and put on a full 60s look, and sometimes she'll wear her hair naturally with a t-shirt and jeans. Her day-to-day style is also very basic, lots of skinny jeans, button-ups, t-shirts, flat shoes, and simple patterns. Now that we've established that, I want to talk about her rise in cultural impact in the early 2010s. Vamp of constant sorrow, Rolling Stone proclaimed over an image of Lana wearing furs and smoking sadly, of course. It's an image that Del Rey would shrewdly utilize in the years following, whether in song names, Summertime Sadness, The Unsettled Sad Girl, or public image, flower crowns, sepia filters, a fixation with suicide and death. Something about this overt yet glamorous sadness, this image of mascara smudged perfectly by tears, of a cigarette in a holder held by a delicate yet trembling hand, stuck in the cultural consciousness of the decade, and thus the internet sad girl was born. In the early 2010s, the social media sites that we love or hate today, so like Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, were starting to really take off. And it's not really surprising that the sad girl, capital S, was starting to come into fruition. Well, let's be honest, there's been sad girls way before the 2010s, but that's another video. It's not surprising because these sites allowed users to share basically everything that they were doing, everything that they were feeling to a virtual world, a concept not fully tapped into yet. I want to talk about Tumblr more specifically because it was a site that I was most familiar with at the time and also the place that I think Lana Del Rey really blew up on. Let's set the scene. It's 2011. Your dashboard has the reblog button at the top of each post. Every notification you got came up on your dashboard in chronological chaos. People were posting their deepest, darkest secrets in stream of consciousness format. You scroll past a low-grade impact font meme, and melodramatic black and white photos with overlaid song lyrics are abundant. It was quite a simple time, and most of the users were, of course, teenage girls. And for anyone who was or was socialized or is still a teenage girl, being a teenage girl
sucks.
And if it didn't / doesn't suck, I'm really happy for you. I'm not one of those like 20-somethings that like try to gatekeep happiness. But like, let's just try to come up with a few things that make teenage girlhood so awful. Here we go. Unchecked mental health issues, improper education on sex and drugs, adults not taking you seriously, realization that the patriarchy exists and you might not be able to accomplish a lot of things that you had originally wanted to accomplish in life when you were a child and had rose-colored glasses about everything, navigation of queerness in spaces that were still pretty unfriendly, and the never-ending onslaught of drama with friends and boys that just like made life a complete living hell. But you know, even if you didn't experience like the whole range of everything, you can see why it sucked for a lot of people. So introducing social media, which like I said, basically gave you a virtual landscape where you could cry and scream and have meltdowns and get validation from strangers who were just like you, all while still remaining somewhat anonymous so that your text posts don't affect your personal life in real life. Yes, I remember when Tumblr was big and it was like a social faux pas for you to ask anyone in real life what their Tumblr was. Tumblr was your space and you weren't supposed to actually know the people you interacted with on there. So the Tumblr sad girl was born. It makes sense. I think being a teenage girl, once again, is an awful experience, but mostly it's awful because you have no control over your life, really. Like, you're still a child, so you have to depend on all these different forces, your family, your school, your community, and finding this community online where everyone is also like, I'm stuck, and we're all going to talk about it, and we're all going to embrace it, and we're all going to own it and romanticize our lives. Like, I think that in theory can be very powerful. The artist Audrey Wallen coined sad girl theory as being a radical concept. She says, the sadness of girls should be recognized as an act of resistance. A limited spectrum of activism excludes a whole history of girls who have used their sorrow and their self-destruction to disrupt systems of domination. Girls' sadness is a way of reclaiming agency over our bodies, identities, and lives. The sad girl aesthetic of Tumblr, though, was honestly not very radical, and I think it was counterproductive, and it was kind of dangerous, honestly. It definitely portrayed self-destruction as this glamorous phenomenon, and really, really bad issues like depression, anxiety, drug addiction, and suicide were often romanticized. Especially when combined with the pastel grunge aesthetic. Popular images that circulated Tumblr at this time were pastel color graded photos of medicine bottles, soft focused bruises, tattoos on always pale skin, and a lot of cigarettes and crying selfies. This was the state of the hipster world when Lana came into prominence, and I don't want to say that it was the mainstream rhetoric because I don't think it was. I think the rhetoric in the mainstream culture was actually more focused on self-love and optimism, like Katy Perry's Roar came out in 2013, I believe. But on Tumblr and in countercultural spaces, it was cool to be sad. It was cool to go against the mainstream rhetoric that was pushing this crippling pressure to succeed. Lana's music allowed a space for wallowing, which honestly is something that everyone needs from time to time. But with this social environment, it makes sense that Lana blew up. She was this conventionally pretty, pouty girl singing in a sultry, cigarette-tainted voice about hopeless devotion to abusive men and being pretty when you cry. It was like peak glamorized self-destruction. And while Lana has said she has never glamorized abuse in a post that I'll talk about a little later, and that everything she wrote about were based on her personal experiences, that may and well be true. It probably is true. Like, who am I to say that what she said isn't true? But the image she cultivated definitely felt like romanticization. And this is because the 20th century female figures that Lana aesthetically aligns with are romanticized even to this day by the media for struggling with addiction and mental health issues, being oppressed by the patriarchy, and passing away untimely. The problem is not so much Lana herself, honestly, but it's society's obsession with beautiful, suffering white women. Like, take for instance, Marilyn Monroe, Jackie Kennedy, Ophelia from Shakespeare's Hamlet, even Marie Antoinette. Sad girls are expected to be beautiful, or they're not really sad girls, capital S, hashtag pretty when you cry. Honestly, that's more society's fault than anything. Like, Lana can't control how she looks. Well, I guess you can technically in this day and age, but you understand what I'm saying. And what's interesting about Lana is that I don't think she was ever really relatable either. Her lyrics could be relatable, I guess, if you've been in a messy relationship with an older man, but I question how many teenage girls actually had those specific experiences, or if Lana just constructed a universe that they wish to belong in. In a Pitchfork article, writer Lindsay Zolads says, "The people in Del Rey's musical universe do not strive or believe that things will get better. They lounge around all day, manicuring their nails, and then drink and smoke themselves into a glamorously inert stupor by night." I feel like people projected onto Lana and actually aspired to be Lana because they would listen to her music and be like, here's a woman singing and she makes her pain sound so beautiful. I want to make my pain beautiful too. The sad girl aesthetic pretty much died by the late 2010s, and I can't say I was really sad about it. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. My opinion for its decline is because the sad girl aesthetic was really like white women / upper middle class / middle class focused, and you know, the struggles of poor women or of women of color or fat women or women in non-Western countries, like those were never talked about. Their issues were never talked about. In the last few years, especially in 2016, a lot more people started to realize there are racial systemic issues and there are just intersectional issues in general. It's kind of sad that it took so long, but we're here, I guess. I hope. When was elected, it felt like more people were starting to realize that the world is pretty fucked up. And there are just larger issues to complain about outside of the self. So where did Lana fit in this cultural transition? Well, people still liked her music because her music is good. And I think she did make a couple moves in the right direction. Like, I always felt Lana was a little bit behind the curve, especially I remember this one Fader interview she did, and she was like, feminism was not an interesting concept to her. So I feel like she was always a little bit behind the curve. But she's been kind of like pushing in the right direction. She's just a little bit behind. She told Pitchfork in 2017 that she wasn't going to show the American flag anymore in her live performances, even though she has one on the cover of her 2019 release, Norman fucking Rockwell. She also said she was no longer going to sing the lyrics, "He hit me and it felt like a kiss," from Ultraviolence. In the past year, she also said that as, quote, personal reparations, she donated the proceeds of her poetry book to Dig Deep Water, which is a nonprofit organization that brings clean running water to Indigenous communities. Obviously, I can't personally say whether or not that puts her in the clear for her previous transgressions, but, I think at the very least, it shows that she is listening to what people say about her. And I think also with NFR, she was kind of going down this path of recreating her Americana image in a more progressive angle, but in a way that still made sense for her. In NFR, lyrics to her song The Greatest include LA's in flames, it's getting hot, Kanye West is blonde and gone, life on Mars ain't just a song, oh, the live stream's almost on. But for some reason, in May last year, she made an infamous Instagram post where she complained about how singers like Doja Cat and Beyonce are allowed to make songs about being sexy and wearing no clothes, while she gets, in her words, crucified for singing about being embodied and feeling beautiful by being in love, even in a relationship that is not perfect. It was pretty bad because the artists she mentioned were mostly black women who definitely have dealt with way more shit in the industry than Lana has. But then Lana went on to say, there has to be a place in feminism for women who look and act like me. I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory why it's tactless for a white woman, especially one that built her entire image on romanticizing mid-century America, to say something like that. And then when she released her album cover for Chemtrails Over the Country Club, which featured mostly white women on it, Lana decided to defend herself in the comments by saying that her best friends and boyfriends have been rappers. Which, to put it nicely, is not really the explanation people wanted to hear. And probably just made things worse. Questionable stuff aside, even her usage of social media in general has changed the way that we perceive her. Daniela Tejerina writes for Vanity Fair, online, Del Rey is far less old Hollywood vixen and much more your mom on Facebook, often posting filtered selfies and captions that invoke the same corny energy as Live, Laugh, Love. And in January 2020, The Cut published an article saying, in recent years, as evidenced by a slew of paparazzi photos and concert looks, Lana has pivoted to what seems to be a more organic approach to dressing, a sort of casual Midwestern mommy way of styling herself. Think Keds, floral knitwear, and bootcut jeans. It's decidedly American, but it's not Americana. It's an aesthetic choice some fans have dubbed her Maxinista period, after TJ Maxx. I will say though, as I said before, Lana's everyday style has always kind of been basic and Midwestern-ish if you look up paparazzi photos from years ago. But I think over time, more people have realized that her street style is not the same as her red carpet style, because lately, and especially with Chemtrails, like the lyrics that she wrote in Chemtrails, she seems like she's just getting tired of separating Lizzie and Lana. And at the 2020 Grammys, Lana showed up to the red carpet wearing a dress she got at the mall. It was an Aiden Maddox gown, which retailed for $600 off the rack. I actually really like that Lana did this because even though the dress is still very expensive, compared to other major celebrities of her rank, who show up to the red carpet wearing something couture that was gifted to them by some designer or brand, #ad. It just felt really authentic and cool that she just, drove to the mall, picked something out that she actually liked, and then wore it to like the biggest music awards ceremony of the country, in the country. To her credit, even though she transitioned from Gucci to TJ Maxx, her style still stays consistent with her music. For example, if you listen to the song White Dress, she reminisces about her life pre-stardom when she was working as a waitress. It feels like she's getting tired of the fame and fortune and just wants to go back to living her small town, pleasant life. Some people have theorized that she might feel this way because she's getting tired of the onslaught of criticism that's been coming towards her in the last few years.
Sometimes it feels like I've got a war in my mind.
Now, I've kind of just been talking about the rise of Lana and some of the criticisms that have been addressed to her lately. But the reason I think this criticism has come up is not because of some overdue analysis of her usage of Americana motifs, nor her alleged glamorization of abuse, because let's be real, she's been criticized for those things for a while now. I remember in 2013, Lorde, who was 17 at the time, told The Fader that she's great, but I listened to that Lana Del Rey record, and the whole time I was just thinking it's so unhealthy for young girls to be listening to, I'm nothing without you, the sort of shirt-tugging, desperate, don't leave me stuff. That's not a good thing for young girls, even young people, to hear. So this isn't news, which I think is also the reason why a lot of people were kind of weirded out that she made that IG post to begin with, because it felt so confusing and unwarranted. Because at the time, she was still getting high praise from NFR and people were literally saying it was like her best album ever. Like, no one was really hating and everyone still pretty much loved Lana. So why is her image starting to crack? Well, in my opinion, it's about social media and the idea of persona. To be clear, Lana has recently claimed that she's never had a persona. When the music critic Ann Powers wrote, honestly, a generally favorable piece about her, Lana took to Twitter replying, "Here's a little side note on your piece. I don't even relate to one observation you made about the music. There's nothing uncooked about me. To write about me is nothing like it is to be with me. Never had a persona, never needed one, never will." But let's be honest, like, let's be real, Miss Lana Del Rey. Like, she definitely had a persona, some kind of it. I would argue that any artist who has a stage name has some kind of persona. I would argue that anyone on the internet has some kind of persona. I also think it's funny because in a previous interview she did with Courtney Love in 2017 for Dazed, Courtney mentions that Lana has built a persona and Lana doesn't say anything against that. Also, are we supposed to conveniently forget that she once dubbed herself Gangster Nancy Sinatra and Lolita from the Hood? That's a whole nother issue. And it's not a bad thing to have a persona. I'm not like,
ooh, Lana has a persona. She's not authentic.
I don't think that at all. I saw actually something on Tumblr a while back. It was a quote where it's like, "You are the mask and the wearer." So every persona is still you. It's just a form of you. And her persona is why the public loved her. It's why Tumblr loved her in the first place. Nate Jones for Vulture claims it's even how Lana escaped from major controversy for so long. Jones said that Del Rey's heightened persona ensured that critiques never escalated into full-on controversy. You couldn't stay mad at Lana Del Rey. It would have been like getting mad at Betty Boop. I totally agree with that stance. I genuinely think people enjoy thinking of her as this like bygone cool girl, and that's how she got away with so many things. Like, honestly, Lana has included a lot of messy subject material in her discography. The Lolita references in Born to Die as just an example. In the same vein, most old Hollywood movies and actors had problematic politics, but it's our nostalgia for this old-timey era that lets these messages slide over our heads. Lana Del Rey used to be this nostalgia-drenched character who sometimes made you wonder whether the things she said were part of an act or things that she actually thought in real life. And even her music, and even though she's come forward many times and has said these lyrics are based on my personal experiences, etc., it's just the way she sang and the words she chose. And honestly, the whole production, it made the songs so theatrical and it made her feel like she was describing a movie plot rather than like an actual experience. I feel like it's definitely a gradual merging of Lana and Lizzie over the years that have kind of destroyed her heightened persona. But in the last year or so, Lana has really been using social media to fight critics and to speak her mind. Unfortunately, when you've created this mystique as an artist, it's really hard to be on social media without shattering the illusion that you've created. There's a lot of really cool celebrities and public figures who use social media responsibly and who still create and maintain healthy boundaries for themselves. There's also a lot of public figures who've actually grown their following and likability based on their interactions with their audience. But I feel like if you became popular for creating this mysterious image, giving the public more access to your private life is probably not going to go that well. The music writer Ryan Daly told BBC, "We don't expect enigmatic artists to respond to criticism generally. Truly mysterious artists often seem like they exist in another realm to the rest of us. To achieve true Prince-like levels of mystery, I think Lana would have to be much more removed from the internet and the press than she is at the moment." Daly calls this phenomenon happening with Lana right now a slow dismantling of mystique in real time. Ouch. But to Lana's defense, it's definitely hard not to be on social media. A lot of the criticisms that Lana addresses are reputation damaging criticisms, like her voting for or her being a racist. And social media is so dangerous because celebrity gossip has really exploded in scale. Rather than just a couple petty tabloids circulating around a supermarket, You log on to Twitter and there are thousands of people making judgments of who you are, assuming things, misreading what you've said. Like, I understand. It is a really tough situation to navigate. And Lana probably thought that using her internet platform to take control over the conversation was a justified decision. And of course, you may be wondering, why is this happening now? Twitter and Instagram have been around for a while now, like longer than Lana's career. And I don't know, I'm just extrapolating. I could be wrong about everything. If Lana wants to quote tweet me and tell me what she thinks. I'm also free for coffee. But maybe Lana is more reactionary these days and is caring less about her cool girl image because she, in some capacity, feels guilty and is trying to navigate her music genre while considering today's politics. Or maybe she's just been famous for long enough now that she feels like it's time to speak her mind. Who really knows, except for Lana? Well, that's all I have for today, folks. Thank you so much for joining me. I had a lot of fun talking about this. And let me know in the comments what you think about Miss Lana Del Rey. And yeah, I'll see you next time. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.